Chapter 2351, Cultivating Like Crazy. Chapter 2351. Cultivating like crazy. Thus, the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Lost Clan had become allies, and cultivators from both sides moved towards each other's continent. The two continents now seemed to be one. Meanwhile, all the forces from outside were paying close attention to what was happening here. At this time, Futian brought the cultivators from the Lost Clan to the Starry Sky world to cultivate. In the Starry Sky, the divine glory of the Imperial Star was shining. Futian pointed to one of the Imperial Stars, which was the one that Blind Tai communicated with back then. Futian said, "This Imperial Star should be suitable for the cultivator of the Lost Clan. It could enhance the physique of those from the Lost Clan. Elders may want to go there and give it a try." Sikongnan nodded slightly. This time he brought some of the Lost Clan's most powerful cultivators to the Ziwei Segmentum and to the Ziwei Imperial Palace's own book collection depository. Before that, Futian had taken them to browse through the books inside Tianshan Academy, and the cultivators from the Lost Clan were madly absorbing and cultivating these methods. Sikongnan looked at a Runhuang of the 9th level next to him. Suddenly the man moved forward, came under the starry sky, and closed his eyes. He was communicating with the Imperial Star. After a while, he successfully established a connection with that Imperial Star. Now that the entire Starry Sky world was under Futian's control, it was no longer as difficult to communicate with the Imperial Star. As long as the cultivation method and the Imperial Star had something in common, a basic resonance was possible. Soon, that cultivator from the Lost Clan was bathing under Imperial glory as he was baptized by the Great Path. His flesh started making crystalline chiming sounds, and his already powerful physique seemed to undergo some kind of change. The other cultivators from the Lost Clan were watching quietly. That power was incredibly strong. No wonder this is the Imperial Star left by the Great Emperor as an inheritance. If it weren't for Emperor Yi, it would have been difficult for us to have this opportunity, Sikongnan said gratefully to Futian. The elder is too kind. Since we are now allies, it is my duty to ensure that the cultivation of all the elders from the Lost Clan improves. In the future, cultivators from the Lost Clan can come to the Starry Sky world to be baptized by the Imperial Star. Apart from that Imperial Star, there might be other Imperial Stars that are suitable for the cultivators of the Lost Clan to cultivate with, Futian said. Sikongnan nodded slightly. Futian had demonstrated sufficient sincerity in this alliance. Not only did he allow them to read the book collections of cultivation, but he had also led them here to be baptized by the Imperial Star. Indeed, he had done all that he could. In a few days, I will take you on a trip to the Divine Prefecture, Futian continued. Sikongnan nodded slightly, wondering what they should give to Futian in return. Just as Futian promised. After some time, Futian and the others left the original realm for the Shangqing domain in the Divine Prefecture and came to Four Corner Village. Futian went to the school first and announced himself, "Teacher. Go and do it." The teacher seemed to know Futian's intention in coming here. He answered him directly for a question Futian had not yet asked. Futian was a little surprised, but he then bowed slightly to salute the man inside, saying, "Now that the original realm is going through major changes, it was necessary for me to resort to some extraordinary means. I shouldn't be bringing anyone to disturb the village, but in order to increase our strength, I chose to come here. Thank you, teacher. The original realm will be changing, and with all these major worlds participating, I am afraid I won't be able to help you much. What you are doing now is moving in the right direction, but the most important thing is not to forget to improve your own strength. Strengthening yourself is the most fundamental principle." The teacher responded as if to remind Futian. Futian understands, but cultivation is not made in one day's time. I only wish that the great changes in original realm will come a little later, Futian replied. He knew that he needed more time, but the changes in original realm were coming sooner rather than later. With the arrival of the major worlds, he didn't have much time to cultivate independently. It might still take some years for him to reach the peak of Renhuang. That was why he was so anxious to improve the strength of their allies, and the cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy, so that Heavenly Mandate Academy may survive this great impending change. Everything is fated, and the changes happening in the original realm are part of it. Take care of yourself. The teacher said go. Futian bowed slightly to the teacher, then turned to leave. In Four Corner Village, a strange aura permeated, which contained the inheritance of divine methods. Like the starry sky world of Ziwei Segmentum, the divine methods inside Four Corner Village were also under Futian's control. He could make these divine methods manifest themselves, thus allowing the cultivators of the Lost Clan to learn from them. Among them was the picture of the domineering golden pung bird, divine hammer of the protector, miniature world, and other divine methods. All were suitable for many cultivators from the Lost Clan. After the cultivators of the Lost Clan arrived, with the help of Futian, they greedily absorbed all the cultivation methods made available to them here. As time passed, Futian led the cultivators from the Lost Clan and the Heavenly Mandate Academy to continue elevating their strength. In the lands of other realms, those other cultivators settled in as well and continued exploring the secrets of the original realm. Temporarily, none were making any moves. Cultivators from all sides descended on the original realm, and countless powerful men gathered. However, no one dared to act impulsively. Once a war erupted, it could lead to terrible consequences. Forces from all sides were acting with extreme caution. There was no change in the outside world, and Futian was not about to provoke forces from the outside. He knew what he wanted to do, and he was constantly improving his own strength. After returning from Four Corner Village, the Lost Clan finally invited Futian and a group of people from the Heavenly Mandate Academy to enter the secret zone paradise of the Lost Clan. Furthermore, they opened up many of the Lost Clan's cultivation caves to Futian and his group. It was natural for the Lost Clan to express their gratitude after Futian had actively fulfilled his promises to them. At this time, Futian came to a cave in the secret zone paradise of the Lost Clan. There was a terrifying atmosphere in this cave, and many patterns were carved on the surrounding stone walls. These pictures were all of human shapes. When comprehended with divine consciousness, it was as if he had entered into another world. All the patterns on the stone walls seemed to come alive, as ancient deities appeared between heaven and earth. Futian, standing in the middle of it all, appeared exceptionally small, like a grain of sand in the ocean. What was carved here was precisely the battle matrix of the rocks. Because Futian wanted to comprehend the battle matrix of the rocks, the cultivators of the Lost Clan brought him to this cave. According to them, the battle matrix of the rocks was created by the many ancestors of the Lost Clan, and they had carved the battle matrix into this cave paradise. All the ancestors who had first created this battle matrix of the rocks had now fallen. They had sacrificed themselves in the process of protecting the Shini continent. Futian stood quietly in this world of the ancient deities. As he was looking at those ancient godlike figures, there was a heaviness in his eyes. He bowed slightly to the phantoms of these ancient gods, because every ancestor of the Lost Clan here was worthy of his respect. A majestic force permeated, and the coercion landed squarely on Futian. He closed his eyes to comprehend all this. It was as if he was completely immersed in this world. The battle matrix of the rocks he had seen in that great battle before had exerted a mighty force. He was curious if he could comprehend anything from it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2352, Idea. Chapter 2352. Idea. In the secret zone paradise, Futian quietly cultivated. It was as though he was in an ethereal space. All around him were ancient gods. The figures of the ancient gods appeared extremely powerful, and their wills filled the sky. Their wills created a miraculous resonance, and seemed to be one being. The battle matrix of the rocks required merging one's will and body of the great path, to unleash its power to its utmost limit. However, before one cultivated the battle matrix of the rocks, one needed to cultivate body refinement techniques. The bodies of the cultivators of the Lost Clan were impressive. Aside from that, activating the battle matrix of the rocks required the various cultivators to be of one mind. The wills of the cultivators who activated the battle matrix of the rocks needed to resonate and become one. This was also no easy feat. It necessitated absolute trust between all of the cultivators and needed a special cultivation technique to achieve. From the looks of it, it took a lot of effort for the seniors of the Lost Clan to create the battle matrix of the rocks. Time gradually passed. Futian comprehended the way quietly. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes and retracted his spiritual soul. He looked at the stone walls. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. He turned around and walked out of the secret zone paradise. Outside, Sikong Nan was actually still there. He seemed to have been waiting for Futian all this while, accompanying Futian as he cultivated in the Lost Clan secret zone. The battle matrix of the rocks requires a special cultivation technique to be set up, right? Can I have a look at it? Futian asked Sikong Nan. Of course, replied Sikong Nan as he nodded his head. He led Futian over to the location outside another secret zone paradise. This secret zone paradise is very dangerous. There have been cultivators of the Lost Clan who never made it out after they entered. However, those who wish to cultivate the battle matrix of the rocks will need to go inside. There is a technique inside that tempers one's flesh and will. It is the most direct method for doing so, explained Sikong Nan. However, with Ran Huangye's ability, entering this place should not pose an issue. All right, I will go inside and have a look around, said Futian. He then stepped into the secret zone paradise. Upon entering inside, Futian instantly sensed a terrifying destructive power sweep over him. It felt as though the space was shattering. There were cracks all around him, as well as lights of catastrophe. An incomplete space was sealed within the secret zone paradise. Inside there was also no place to dodge or hide. This, exclaimed Futian as he felt his heart tremble. His flesh shook, and brilliant divine light burst forth from his body of the great path. Destructive winds washed over his figure. The winds were as sharp as blades and attempted to ravage his body. The friction between the winds and his body of the great path actually created screeching sounds. Rumble. An attack seemed to strike his spiritual soul directly. A bolt of black lightning appeared to charge straight into his consciousness. It contained terrifying destructive power. Was this set up to mimic the endless dark region? Futian thought to himself as he walked forward step by step. This secret zone paradise was like a black hole that consumed everything. The further he entered the space, the more terrifying the attack power acting on him became. It seemed endless. The Sheni continent had been wandering around the endless darkness. It never saw the light of day, and was always faced with calamities. Hence, they mimicked the endless darkness, and established this region to temper the cultivators of the Lost Clan. This allowed them to experience and learn to adapt to the power of darkness in the Lost Clan secret zone whenever they wished. Though such a method was well-intentioned, it was very harsh. The Lost Clan did not hold back against their own members. However, if they had not done so, they would have long been destroyed and would not have survived until the present day. What was inside this place? Futian thought. His spiritual soul could not penetrate the storm. As he continued to advance, even more terrifying destructive power attacked his flesh and spiritual soul. Gradually, his flesh shone with brilliant divine light and appeared more and more frightening. It seemed like a divine body of the great path. The will he unleashed also reached an extremely powerful state. Only then could he keep himself steady as he advanced. If even he had to resort to such methods, the cultivators of the Lost Clan would have had an extremely difficult time passing through the secret zone paradise. After passing through the storm of darkness, he came to another space. There was also a stone wall here. On it, the depiction of a cultivation technique was carved. It was a technique to train one's flesh and will, used in conjunction with the storm in the black hole. It could temper one's flesh and will to an extremely powerful state. That meant that the cultivators who could activate the battle matrix of the rocks had all been here before. Futian closed his eyes and began to cultivate. After a period of time, He left the place and once again met with Sikongnan. How did it feel? Sikongnan asked Yi Futian. Yi Futian commented, the seniors of the Lost Clan were admirable for managing to create such cultivation techniques. However, after creating them, the seniors did not derive other methods of attack. They merely utilized this to resolve the crisis of the Shini continent and protect the continent. It is somewhat of a waste. Ren Huangyi, what do you mean by this? Asked Sikongnan. Yi Futian explained, the battle matrix of the rocks has astonishing defensive power. If the Lost Clan relied on the defense of the matrix and combined it with other offensive techniques, such a combination would be extremely powerful. If you were to face another battle like the one before, you would not need to sacrifice your lives. You could have directly deterred the cultivators of the ancient god clan from the divine prefecture. The requirements for the battle matrix of the rocks are very high. The cultivators in the battle matrix need to have their powers resonate. If they attack individually, it will destroy the balance of the battle matrix. The seniors who created the battle matrix of the rocks did not create attack techniques for it. Does Ren Huangyi have any ideas in mind? Sikongnan said when he heard Yi Futian's words. He had a pondering look. He seemed to have noticed something from Yi Futian's statement. Replied Yi Futian as he nodded his head. I believe that the battle matrix of the rocks can still be modified, so that the cultivators in it can achieve resonance and unleash an art of supreme attack of the Great Path. That way, the might of the battle matrix of the rocks will be improved slightly. When Sikongnan heard Yi Futian say this, he revealed a strange expression. He said, if we can truly manage to do so, it will be more than just a slight improvement. Due to being a defensive matrix, the battle matrix of the rocks has always been lacking in offensive capabilities. If it is as you say, it will be a transformation. Its power will improve immensely. Maybe, said Yi Futian. Ren Huangyi, are you confident in pulling it off? Asked Sikongnan. I will try, replied Yi Futian. All right. If that is the case, we will trouble you to do so, said Sikongnan as he nodded his head. I will cultivate in the battle matrix secret zone paradise for a few days, said Yi Futian as he headed towards the previous secret zone paradise. He then once again entered there to cultivate. Sikongnan stood outside and watched as Yi Futian walked inside. There was a look of anticipation in his eyes. If Yi Futian could add an art of supreme attack to the battle matrix of the rocks as he said, the overall ability of the Lost Clan would reach a whole new level. That way, in the current chaotic original realm, their ability to protect themselves would be higher. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2353, Realization. Chapter 2353. Realization. In the gigantic empty region of the Lost Clan, many powerful Renhuangs of the Lost Clan gathered. Sikongnan and a few elders of the Lost Clan were also there. They were standing to one side and looking straight ahead. There were 9 Renhuangs at the same cultivation plane standing there. They were all 8th-tier Renhuangs with frightening auras. Among them, there was another white-haired figure. It was Yi Futian. After cultivating in the secret zone paradise for a few days, Yi Futian wanted to attempt to improve the battle matrix of the rocks. This was their first experiment. The Lost Clan had a high opinion of Yi Futian. This might cause the ability of their clan to reach a new level. The cultivators were naturally exceptionally serious. Sikongnan and the other senior members were all present. Seniors, please set up the matrix, Yi Futian said. The 9 great Renhuangs stepped forward. They stood in the sky in different locations. The aura of the Great Path burst forth from their bodies as divine light shone brightly. Powerful wills emanated from their bodies. Instantly, illusory figures of the ancient gods appeared and loomed over the sky. They formed some sort of resonance under the influence of the wills of the Renhuangs. Then they weaved together, and an enclosed space was formed. A solemn sound, similar to the rhythm of the Great Path, echoed. The space suddenly became exceptionally grim. Very quickly, the battle matrix of the rocks took shape. A terrifying power erupted from the battle matrix, sealing off this part of the sky. Yi Futian stood in the battle matrix, wielding a long spear. Divine light of the great path circled around him, and terrifying battle intent emanated from the long spear. The sound of the great path also roared from within his body. Yi Futian's figure flashed, and he charged out like a bolt of lightning. He was like a god of war, as he stabbed straight out with his long spear. Bang! With a loud explosion, the illusory figures exploded and shattered. The long spear struck a point on the battle matrix of the rocks. In an instant, the cultivators who had set up the battle matrix of the rocks all closed their eyes. Their wills resonated, followed by the divine light of the great path shining. All of the defensive power of the battle matrix seemed to gather at the point that Yi Futian had struck, causing the long spear to be unable to pierce through. This was the strength of the battle matrix of the rocks. The defensive power of the battle matrix could be focused on one region, causing it to be as indestructible as a rock. "Try attacking," said Yi Futian. A cultivator immediately lifted his hand and struck out. A gigantic palm strike charged towards Yi Futian. However, at the same time, a flaw surfaced on the battle matrix of the rocks. In the direction of the cultivator who was attacking, a huge hole appeared. A cultivator attacking directly disrupted the balance of the matrix. Bang! Yi Futian's long spear struck out and shattered the palm strike. He looked towards the battle matrix, and then stepped out. He also merged with the battle matrix and became a part of it. Yi Futian waved his arm, and the guqin strings of the great path before him materialized into a guqin. He played some notes. As the music flowed, everyone's hearts seemed to skip and beat according to the rhythm. Each and every musical note had the power to influence their hearts. When Yi Futian inherited the teachings of Shenin the Great, he also received many songs that the great emperor had created. Even though the songs were not as good as the divine melody song of the lost divine that he created, they still had their merits. After all, Shenin the Great was the top rhythmic sorcerer of his time. The songs that he created were undoubtedly great. A song was played as the musical notes danced around in the air. The sound of the guqin was crisp and melodious. It contained a magical power, which allowed the cultivators to resonate with it through their spiritual energy. They seemed to have become one with the music. Gradually, the music enveloped every inch of the space. In the battle matrix, the spiritual energy of all the cultivators merged with the music. Their wills resonated with the beat of the music. In the distance, Sikong Nan and the rest of the cultivators were observing the happenings in the battle matrix. Their gazes changed as they sensed the transformation which occurred in the matrix. They could sense a rhythmic storm of the guqin. This rhythmic storm was a formless storm of rhythmic sorcery. It surrounded the entire battle matrix of the rocks, and became one with it. It was as though the music had completely merged into the battle matrix of the rocks. The cultivators were astonished by this occurrence. "I heard that he has received the teachings of the ancient Shenin the Great?" asked an elder of the lost clan. Rumor has it that Shenin the Great was the top rhythmic sorcerer of his time," Sikong Nan explained. "There are relatively few cultivators in the world who are proficient in the way of rhythm. There are even fewer of them who can cultivate the way up to a high level. It's rare for someone to have such attainment in music. Yi Futian must have been very good in rhythmic sorcery, even before he obtained the inheritance of Shenin the Great." The other cultivators nodded in agreement. They continued to listen to the music quietly. The battle matrix of the rocks seemed to have become even more complete with the support of the music. Everything cohered into a unified whole. As the music grew more and more intense, the spiritual energy unleashed by the 9 cultivators also intensified. The divine light shone brilliantly. The aura circulating in the battle matrix of the rocks became even more frightening. The ancient gods were all shimmering with bright golden light. The cultivators in the battle matrix seemed to have lost their sense of self and joined together harmoniously. Rumble. Frightening aura spread outwards. The various cultivators moved at the same time. They looked ahead, and their movements were synchronized. The figures of the ancient gods raised their hands at the same time and sent palm strikes directly downwards. Intense rumbling of the great path could be heard. In the battle matrix of the rocks, various palm prints appeared and came crashing downwards. This scene caused Sikong Nan and the other cultivators to have sharp gazes. They seemed to have witnessed the prototype of the battle matrix of the rocks, unleashing a powerful offensive technique. Powerful aura still emanated from within the battle matrix of the rocks. Then a second wave of attacks burst forth. The ancient gods came to life. All of them sent out offensive techniques simultaneously. The might of their attacks was astonishing. Gradually, as they kept on attacking, their attacks seemed to not be as in sync as before. It appeared somewhat chaotic. Did it fail? Mumbled the elders of the lost clan over where Sikong Nan was when they saw this scene. The surrounding cultivators stared at the battle matrix of the rocks. Sikong Nan narrowed his gaze slightly. He shook his head and said, "No. Although the attacks appear chaotic, they are in fact following the same rhythm. Wherever an attack from an ancient god in one place weakens, the attacks in other locations will grow stronger." The attacks landed time and time again. Suddenly, within the battle matrix of the rocks, a gigantic palm print appeared. Its might was astonishing. It seemed to burst forth from one of the figures of the ancient gods. The body of the ancient god was dazzling from head to toe, and contained world-dominating might. The will of the cultivators had all merged into the figure of this ancient god, causing awe-inspiring attack power to burst forth. When the attack landed, the heavens and earth seemed to collapse. It was far superior to any of the previous attacks. "It is a success," mumbled Sikong Nan when he saw this scene. The battle matrix of the rocks had been fully integrated. It was not only complete in terms of defense, but also attack. They could gather the power of the battle matrix in different locations whenever they wanted, and unleash a unified attack. They looked at the battle matrix of the rocks. It was now complete. Compared to before, it had undergone a huge transformation. In the battle matrix, the 8th tier Renhuangs also sensed this. They were all somewhat excited. Right then, their wills dispersed, and the battle matrix immediately dissipated. The sound of the guqin stopped playing, and the battle matrix of the rocks disappeared along with it, leaving Yi Futian and the 9 Renhuangs standing there. When the Renhuangs looked at Yi Futian, their eyes sparkled with astonishment. They did not expect the experiment to be successful. Just now, they could clearly sense that they were more unified than any of their previous attempts. The resonance they felt made them feel as though the 9 of them were a single entity. Renhuang Yi, Sikong Nan, and the rest smiled as they walked up to Yi Futian. Sikong Nan said, "I did not expect us to succeed on our first trial. Your music is indeed marvelous." "We're still far from succeeding," Yi Futian disagreed while shaking his head. This caused the rest of them to be stupefied. They were still far from success? Just now, hadn't they succeeded? Yi Futian expounded. "Just now the 9 cultivators did it with my music as the medium. However, in order for it to be called a success, seniors from the Lost Clan need to be able to achieve the resonance on their own, without the guidance of the music. Otherwise you have to always rely on it. Since that's the case, then Renhuang Yi can be the crux of the battle matrix of the rocks," said Sikong Nan with a smile. However, he also understood from Yi Futian's words that they still had a long way to go. Yi Futian's idea was plausible. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Yi Futian didn't leave after trying to change the battle matrix of the rocks. Instead, he stayed in the Lost Clan, trying to improve himself. Yi Futian didn't leave after trying to change the battle matrix of the rocks. Instead, he stayed in the Lost Clan, trying to improve himself. In his normal state, he could only urge the battle matrix of the rocks at a level of Renhuang in the 8th realm. To get to an even more powerful state, so that he could lead the battle matrix of the rocks in a higher realm, he would require some unique means. Although he hoped that one day the cultivators of the Lost Clan could break away from the sound of guqin, while still achieving full resonance, it would take time and practice, as well as absolute mutual trust between each other. All of which could not be done in just a day or two. At the same time, Yi Futian asked some cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate in both the battle matrix of the rocks and the rock battle form to purify their spiritual will. At this moment, in a cave inside the Lost Clan, The great path roared inside Yi Futian's body. Infinite characters flew out from that divine body, creating an extremely radiant sight. As those characters surrounded him, the divine light of the great path merged as well, and Yi Futian's body was suddenly expanding. At the same time, a phantom of the ancient god appeared behind him, like a Vajra battle form that contained powerful coercion. His entire body was filled with brilliant light, as the divine light of the great path circulated above this battle form. This was the rock battle form. The ancestors of the Lost Clan combined the power of Gungjin and space to forge this powerful battle form, rendering it indestructible and invincible, which was also the foundation of the battle matrix of the rocks. Although he attempted to use the sound of Guqin to unify the rock battle matrix, he himself was separated from it. He had considered that if there were to be battles in the future, he had to be within the matrix, so it became necessary for him to cultivate this battle form. By then, he could be a part of the battle matrix and work in sync with it during the fighting. There were 9 levels of the rock battle form. The first 3 levels were easy enough to cultivate, and the middle 3 levels weren't considered difficult either. It was no problem for people in their realm to cultivate them. The challenges were mostly on the last 3 levels, which required powerful spiritual will to create a perfect battle form. The will and the battle form must be perfect as one. At the top limit of the cultivation, one transformed into an ancient deity and became part of it. Previously in the battle matrix of the rocks, those cultivators who were urging the battle matrix had attempted to urge the strongest state of their own battle form. However, it was very dangerous for them, because they had not yet reached that point in their cultivation. There were many cave paradises in the secret zone of the Lost Clan, but Yi Futian did not have much interest in cultivating other methods inside those caves. He was an expert at many abilities, most of which were inherited from great emperors. Therefore, it was meaningless for him to cultivate other methods or abilities. What he wanted to achieve now was improving his overall strength. For him, this meant that it could only be achieved by altering the battle matrix of the rocks. The battle matrix formed by Top Ren Huang was far different in combat effectiveness than the one that came just individuals. While he was cultivating, the other forces did not remain idle. How could the people from these top forces so easily let go of this continent that had descended? Yi Futian tried to avoid destroying the foundation of the continent, but these outsiders did not have those concerns. They simply didn't care enough. Myriad Realm and the Higher Heavens Realm had both experienced severe destructions. Cultivators from the empty Divine Realm and the Devil World were currently plundering the secrets of these 2 realms. It was the Central Emperor Realm that had been very quiet. Because the cultivators from Divine Prefecture were there, Princess Donghuang was there along with the great imperial army. None of the principalities from the Divine Prefecture dared to do anything foolish, and the cultivators from the human realm would not go about and cause damages at will. Today, out of all the 9 supreme imperial realms of the original realm, probably only the Central Emperor Realm, the Heavenly Mandate Realm, and the Mountain Realm were still intact. No cultivators dared to touch the Mountain Realm, because the power of Buddhism was still something to be reckoned with in the upper worlds. On this day, in the secret zone of the Lost Clan, Old Ma came looking for Yi Futian. "Uncle Ma, did anything happen at the academy?" Yi Futian asked when he saw Old Ma coming over. "Nothing much, but not long ago, some people came to the academy asking to see you," Old Ma responded. Yi Futian raised his eyebrows slightly. Someone wanted to see him? For Old Ma to come and inform him personally, the person's identity must not have been ordinary, or else Old Ma and the others would have refused this person outright instead of coming over to find him. As if he had read Yi Futian's mind, Old Ma said, "Lord Taixian told them that you are cultivating in retreat, and asked the visitor to come back in a few days. However, these people were extremely aggressive, and had forced their way in. With supreme cultivators in tow, we couldn't stop them. They went straight into the cottage inside Heavenly Mandate Academy, saying that they will stay there until you get back. But they didn't seem to be malicious. Although they forced their way in, they didn't hurt anyone," Old Ma continued. Yi Futian nodded. Had the other party injured any of the cultivators inside the academy, Old Ma would not have such an easygoing attitude. Even so, for these people to force their way into the Heavenly Mandate Academy was still a little out of line and way too arrogant. Who were they? Yi Futian asked. He was already walking outside as he spoke. Clearly, he understood that since Old Ma came here, it meant that they couldn't handle the situation and that he needed to go back. The ancient god clan of Divine Prefecture, the overlord of the West Sea Domain, the West Imperial Palace, Old Ma responded. Previously, they had also participated in that battle with the Lost Clan. Yi Futian nodded, recalling some things about this principality. At that time, the person in charge of West Imperial Palace was a Run Huang of the 8th Realm, with overpowering strength. He was a man of few words and not fond of meaningless chit-chat. He wondered if it was him this time, who led people to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. But what business would West Imperial Palace have with him now? It didn't take long before Yi Futian was out of the secret zone, bade his goodbye to the Lost Clan, and departed with Old Ma to the Heavenly Mandate Academy without asking anyone else from the academy to accompany them. After all, the two continents were now right next to each other. He didn't need to bother anyone else from the academy cultivating in the Lost Clan. It was quite sufficient for him to handle this matter himself. Inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy, many cultivators from the academy were gathering around the cottage. In a courtyard outside of the cottage, a group of people stood there quietly. The person in the lead seemed particularly interested in the cottage. The person was moving around freely, as if this place was part of the West Imperial Palace. They did not show the slightest sense of peculiarity. At this moment, one of them looked up in the distance and said, "He is here." With that, the cultivators from West Imperial Palace looked in one direction and heard a voice from a distance. "The West Imperial Palace came to visit us, and I was not able to welcome you in person. I ask for your forgiveness." After those words fell, Yi Futian's figure appeared in the sky above the academy, then descended into the cottage inside, looking at the group of cultivators facing him. The makeup of the delegation from West Imperial Palace was a strong one. At the time when they were at the Lost Clan, he did not observe them too closely. However, now that he was reassessing the power of the ancient god clan, it was indeed terrifying. His eye directed at the cultivator heading the delegation again, and saw that it was a woman. However, she appeared quite handsome, dressed in attire that appeared rather gender-neutral. Nonetheless, it was difficult to conceal her alluring feature and demeanor. Yi Futian remembered that in the last war with the Lost Clan, this woman was not part of it, so she might be someone who came into the picture later. But he saw that the woman, likewise, was assessing him in a similar way. Yi Futian, who came from the lower worlds under the jurisdiction of Emperor Xia's realm, entered Emperor Xia's realm to cultivate. Then he moved from the Crimson Dragon realm to the Heavenly Mandate realm. Later, his name was known throughout the 9 realms, reputed as the uncrowned king of the original realm. Yi Futian's eyes sharpened a bit. Had the other side been checking on him? Seeing Yi Futian's expression, the person knew that he was a little displeased. She explained, "Emperor Yi need not be surprised by this. In the battle at the Lost Clan, Emperor Ye's performance was amazing in defeating the people of Ancient God Clan. And it was said that you also defeated the Devil Emperor's direct disciple Xiao Mu. How could we not be intrigued by such a legendary figure like yourself? And the West Imperial Palace is not alone. By now, the cultivation experience of Emperor Yi was probably quite a bit clearer to most top principalities in Divine Prefecture. After all, none of this is a secret. Everything leaves a trail to be followed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 2355, West Imperial Palace. Chapter 2355. West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian's eyes were a little cold when he heard what the woman had to say. Were these forces in Divine Prefecture checking into his background? Indeed, as the other stated, his climb to fame could not be completely erased. In the Heavenly Mandate realm alone, more than a few people knew that he had first come from the Crimson Dragon realm. And anyone who went to the Crimson Dragon realm could surely trace his movements back to Emperor Xia's realm. Once they were at Emperor Xia's realm, it wouldn't be hard to continue tracking his history, layer by layer. As long as they were determined enough, there was enough information for them to dig up. When they set their minds on investigating something, those top powers in Divine Prefecture had a way to uncover anything they want, unless it was something extremely secretive. It seems that Emperor Yi cared a lot about that. But as eye-catching as Emperor Yi has been, I'm sure you understand this is quite unavoidable. Not to mention that Emperor Yi has already relocated families and associates from the lower worlds to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, then sent them on to Ziwei Segmentum. There is not much sense in disguising these details. The beautiful eyes of the peerless Empress from West Imperial Palace stared directly into Yi Futian's, as if she was trying to fathom something from those eyes of his. Yi Futian raised his head and looked at her. When they locked eyes, Yi Futian seemed to have calmed down, not showing his emotions from before. It seemed that he no longer cared about what the other person had to say. West Imperial Palace didn't come here just to tell me this, surely? Yi Futian looked at the Empress and said, "Furthermore, the way by which you all forced your way into the Heavenly Mandate Academy doesn't seem very friendly." Emperor Yi was cultivating in the Lost Clan and avoided receiving visitors. Without using extraordinary measures, how could we meet Emperor Yi face to face? The Empress answered with tranquility. As for our visit this time, naturally, we are not here just to inform you that those principalities in the Divine Prefecture were checking you out. We just wanted to remind Emperor Yi that as someone who caused this many waves, you are attracting unwanted attention. What's more, Emperor Yi is in possession of inheritances from several great emperors. Principalities from whichever side have some designs of their own. Furthermore, don't forget that while you were at the Lost Clan, Emperor Yi had already offended most of the cultivators in Divine Prefecture, including West Imperial Palace. Therefore, although the original realm is part of Divine Prefecture, Emperor Yi must have some ideas as to the feelings of these forces from Divine Prefecture. Now cultivators in other worlds are also watching closely, and surely, they are not friendlies as far as Yi Futian is concerned. In that case, many thanks to the goddess, Yi Futian said with a smile. The Heavenly Mandate Academy wishes to make more friends. And what better friendship than being allied with the West Imperial Palace and the forces in the West Sea domain? Naturally, the Heavenly Mandate Academy is more than willing. I myself also want to be good friends with you, goddess. Would the West Imperial Palace ally so easily with the Heavenly Mandate Academy? If this were really the case, he wouldn't mind. After all, he understood that what the other had just laid out for him was the truth. The situation as it stood today was not the most favorable for the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The woman from the West Imperial Palace was caught by surprise when Yi Futian readily agreed with her. This was a man who knew how to take advantage of any situation. If the West Imperial Palace wanted to stand on the side of Heavenly Mandate Academy, they would also endure a great deal of pressure. They knew the current situation better than anyone. The alliance was true enough, but it was not as simple as all that. Is Emperor Yi willing to enter the West Imperial Palace to cultivate then? The woman asked suddenly. Yi Futian was stunned. To cultivate at West Imperial Palace? What exactly does goddess mean by this? Yi Futian looked at the other and queried. The West Imperial Palace is inherited from the West Emperor, and it is the overlord of the West Sea domain. The inheritance of the West Emperor is contained in the Imperial Palace. I know that Emperor Yi shoulders the inheritance of several great emperors, but the inheritance of any great emperor is extraordinary. If Emperor Yi is willing to enter the West Imperial Palace to cultivate, you will have the opportunity to inherit from yet another great emperor. The woman continued. In addition, the West Imperial Palace will treat Emperor Yi fairly. Whatever status or conditions that Emperor Yi desires, we will consider them all. Behind Yi Futian, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were looking at this peerless empress from the West Imperial Palace. Secretly, they were all amazed at the ambition expressed by West Imperial Palace. They were bold enough to persuade Yi Futian to cultivate in the West Imperial Palace, thus becoming a part of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian's status was not as it was once. Today, he was the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, and the leader of Four Corner Village, all at the same time. In addition, he shouldered the inheritance from Ziwei the Great, Xinjia the Great Emperor, and Shinin the Great simultaneously. Not long ago, he was ruling the land of the original realm. What kind of principality dared to convince him to cultivate under them? From the perspective of those from the Heavenly Mandate Academy, such a request was only possible unless it was the likes of Donghuang the Great, the Devil Emperor, the Evil Emperor, and other such characters of this caliber who requested person. For a great emperor who was no more, it was just not enough to attract Yi Futian to cultivate under him with the inheritance alone. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2356, Shi Qiyao. Chapter 2356. Shi Qiyao. Yi Futian looked at the female Runhuang from the West Imperial Palace and said, "May I ask who you are, goddess?" "I am Shi Qiyao from the West Imperial Palace," said the woman. "Shi Qiyao," mumbled Yi Futian to himself. Behind Shi Qiyao, an elder from West Imperial Palace said, "Goddess Qiyao is a descendant of the West Emperor, and is the first heir of West Imperial Palace." When Yi Futian heard the elder say this, he had a strange expression. Back during the battle against the Lost Clan, he had not seen Shi Qiyao. Another cultivator had participated in the battle. She most likely was not in the original realm back then. After Princess Donghuang gave the order, the various forces of the Divine Prefecture must have sent more of their members down to the lower worlds. Only then did Shi Qiyao come here. Shi Qiyao also claimed to be the descendant of the West Emperor and the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Her status was extremely noble. From the looks of it, the other party also placed great importance on this matter. In reality, Yi Futian did not know much about Shi Qiyao's status in the West Sea domain. Shi Qiao had already been famous for many years there. She was born into an extraordinary background. She was the direct descendant of the West Emperor. When she received her family inheritance, she awakened the bloodline of the West Emperor and had extremely high compatibility with its power. She displayed unparalleled talent and was a perfect fit for the teachings that the West Emperor had left behind. Hence, she was declared to be the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. If it weren't for the fact that such a huge change was occurring in the original realm, it would have been impossible for a person of her standing to come to the lower worlds. There was a huge commotion in the various major worlds. A storm was surging in the original realm. The saying that the changes of the worlds would begin in the original realm had been passed down in the Divine Prefecture. Hence, various forces of the Divine Prefecture had arrived here. She, the goddess of the West Imperial Palace and its first heir, had also arrived. As for why she had come to invite Yi Futian, it was actually because she wanted to test him. Based on the investigation carried out by the West Imperial Palace on Yi Futian, they discovered that there were suspicious elements regarding Yi Futian's background. He originated from the 9 states in the lower worlds. However, there were many parts of his journey up to the present day that were unclear. As the goddess of the West Imperial Palace, Shi Qiao had a thorough view of the talents of the cultivation world. Ordinary people might rely on extremely tenacious will, faith, and chance to advance forward, but it was impossible for them to have a smooth journey all the way. Yi Futian had developed too rapidly to the point that he could subdue the various proud sons of heaven. He did not appear to be an ordinary figure. If that was the case, it was likely that he was not from the lower worlds. According to their investigation, Yi Futian's birthplace seemed to have vanished completely. The records of his youth were erased just like that. There were many mysterious points regarding Yi Futian. He seemed to hide many secrets. He also controlled the Ziwei segmentum and the Four Corner Village, and bore the teachings of several great emperors. Hence, Shi Qiao had come over to the Heavenly Mandate Academy to win over Yi Futian. Yi Futian revealed a look of deep thought as he looked at Shi Qiao and said, "Goddess Qiao, you mean to say you will agree to any condition I put forward?" Yi Futian was smiling as he looked at Shi Qiao. Her temperament was extraordinary. There seemed to be a formless glow around her figure. It was as though divine light circled around her. Ordinary people would be ashamed of themselves and would not dare to approach someone with such temperament. When Shi Qiao saw Yi Futian's gaze scanning her, she revealed a strange look. The cultivators of the West Imperial Palace frowned slightly. Was Yi Futian after the goddess herself? Ren Huangyi, what are your conditions? Shi Qiao asked. Her expression was normal, and she appeared calm. Yi Futian slowly said, since we are forming an alliance, we naturally need to show our sincerity. Goddess Qiao has extraordinary talent. Would you be willing to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate with me as a member? If the West Imperial Palace is willing to allow me to inherit the teachings of the West Emperor, I will not let Goddess get the short end of the stick. I will guide you in your cultivation and give you the opportunity to inherit the teachings of the great emperors that I have obtained. As he said this, a formless aura emanated from the bodies of the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace. They frowned, and their auras instantly turned solemn. So presumptuous, chided an elder as he coldly snorted. Goddess Qiao was the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian wanted Goddess to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy and cultivate? She had to follow him? He also claimed that he would not let Goddess get the short end of the stick and would guide her in her cultivation? Yi Futian spoke with such arrogance. However, the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy had indifferent expressions, as though it was a matter of course. These cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had trespassed in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. They wanted Yi Futian to join the West Imperial Palace to cultivate. They also wanted to form an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. If that was the case, there was nothing to be said about the condition Yi Futian suggested. If he joined the West Imperial Palace to cultivate, Goddess Qiao would likewise join the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Otherwise, wouldn't Yi Futian be inferior to the other party? How is this considered presumptuous? Futian is the heir of several great emperors. He defeated a disciple of the Devil Emperor and an heir of the ancient God clan. He is also the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy and Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace. How is he inferior to Goddess Qiao? Ren Huangqin said. His tone sounded displeased. Since the other party had come here, how could they not show any sincerity? How was this forming an alliance? They clearly wanted to claim the powers that Yi Futian controlled as their own. How can Goddess be compared to Hua Junlai? An elder of the West Imperial Palace coldly snorted. Yi Futian had defeated Hua Junlai, the heir of the Haotian clan in the region of the Lost Clan. However, it was apparent that in the eyes of the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace, Hua Junlai was unqualified to be compared to Shi Qiao. Shi Qiao was the first heir of the West Imperial Palace, and the top genius recognized in the West Sea domain. She was destined to become the top figure and ruler of the West Sea domain. Although Hua Junlai was the heir of the Haotian clan, he was not the only heir in the clan. Shi Qiao's standing in the West Sea domain could not be compared to Hua Junlai's standing in the Nantian domain. Hua Junlai is but a nobody who lost to Futian. However, Yi Futian managed to suppress him, even though his own cultivation was a plane lower than that of Hua Junlai. So what if Goddess Qiao is even more outstanding than Hua Junlai? Ren Huangqin replied indifferently. The other party's tone was arrogant, so he naturally did not mince his words either. Yi Futian was the heir chosen by Great Emperor Ziwei. He would not be inferior to the heir of the West Emperor. In ancient times, Great Emperor Ziwei was one of the strongest great emperors. He was an existence that stood at the peak. Several great emperors were under his command. Ren Huangqin was not holding back when he said this. The members of the West Imperial Palace believed that Goddess Qiao was peerless. However, the members of the Heavenly Mandate Academy did not think so. So what if she was Goddess Qiao? Before Yi Futian, she was unqualified to act arrogant. I wish to hear Ren Huangye's opinion, Shi Qiao said as she looked towards Yi Futian. Yi Futian looked at her and said, I have already stated my opinion. Could it be that Goddess is not willing to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy and cultivate together with me? When Shi Qiao heard Yi Futian's words, she actually smiled. She had a face that could launch 1,000 ships. Many cultivators of the West Imperial Palace were somewhat mesmerized. Shi Qiao rarely revealed such a smile. This Yi Futian was truly presumptuous. As expected of Ren Huangyi, "You are exactly as I have heard," Shi Qiao said as she smiled. "Ren Huangyi, it is fine if you want me to cultivate with you. However, my answer will depend on your skill." Chapter 2357, Raining Swords. Chapter 2357, Raining Swords. When Yi Futian heard Shi Qiao's words, he smiled at her and said, "Goddess Qiao, do you mean to say that you wish to test me?" Shi Qiao's cultivation was at the same level as Hua Junlai from the Haotian clan. She was an 8th-tier Renhuang. However, from the way the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace acted, Shi Qiao's cultivation should be far stronger than that of Hua Junlai. Unfortunately, Yi Futian knew little about these peerless figures of the divine prefecture. They were both cultivators of the ancient god clan, but there would certainly be a difference between them. After all, Shi Qiao was the descendant of the West Emperor, and was also the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian wondered how her abilities would compare to Xiao Mu's, because he was a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Yi Futian wanted to test her abilities. He was also curious what level of combat ability a top monstrous figure of the divine prefecture had. The cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had displeased expressions. As expected, this top genius of the original realm was extremely arrogant. They had investigated everything about him before this. It was indeed the case that in Yi Futian's long development, almost no one of his generation managed to suppress him. No wonder he behaved so presumptuously. If that is the case, I also wish to test out Ren Huangye's abilities myself, said Shi Qiao. Divine light circled around her body as she looked at Yi Futian with her beautiful gaze. Yi Futian's figure flashed. He traversed the space in an instant and appeared high in the sky. Shi Qiao raised her head slightly as she took light steps forward. Divine light flashed, and she also floated upwards. In an instant, the two of them appeared in a region extremely high above the ground. In the Heavenly Mandate Academy, cultivators similarly rose into the sky. There were cultivators from the Academy, as well as the West Imperial Palace. They stood at different locations as they looked up at the two silhouettes in the sky. Yi Futian and Shi Qiao stood across from each other. Their figures were extremely dazzling to behold. Yi Futian's divine body of the Great Path shone brilliantly. Shi Qiao was like a peerless goddess, noble and arrogant. Her temperament was without equal. Her body was bathed in divine imperial glory, causing people not to dare look at her directly. It was as though she was a true goddess. Shi Qiao was the cultivator who had the highest compatibility with the teachings of the West Emperor. No one like her had appeared in the West Imperial Palace in the past millennia. She was the strongest person who awakened to its power. Hence, she had long been viewed as the first heir by the West Imperial Palace. In the current West Imperial Palace, no one could challenge her position. Wherever she went, she would always have multitudes of cultivators escorting her. The various cultivators of the West Imperial Palace would be there to protect her. This time, she had come to the lower worlds. That meant that the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had also come along to the original realm. Goddess Qiao, shall we? Invited Yi Futian. He seemed polite. Ren Huangyi, your cultivation plane is lower than mine. You should start us off, replied Shi Qiao. From their exchange, others could see how proud they were. They were reluctant to make the first move. From afar, the wills of cultivators descended upon them. Many cultivators below knew that they were not the only ones around. The West Imperial Palace coming over to the Heavenly Mandate Academy had drawn the attention of many of the top forces from the Central Emperor realm in the Divine Prefecture. Many of them had already arrived, but they had kept themselves out of sight and had not made themselves known. During the battle against the Lost Clan, Yi Futian suppressed Hua Junlai with his overwhelming might. Now, would he emerge victorious against Shi Qiao, the top monstrous figure of the West Sea Domain, and the princess of the West Imperial Palace? If that is the case, then let's attack at the same time, said Yi Futian with a smile. As he said this, the pressure of the Great Path enveloped the vast space, covering this part of the sky. A formless storm encapsulated the vast land. The humming of swords sounded, and sword will circled all around the space. Shi Qiao similarly released her own aura. This aura was unfamiliar to Yi Futian. It was a yin aura that seemed to contain a sharpness to it, and appeared indestructible. He had never encountered an opponent with such an aura before. Shi Qiao was unique. The heavens and earth seemed to dampen. In the heavens above, raindrops appeared and drizzled down on the sword will that Yi Futian had gathered. The next moment, his sword will was actually drowned out by the raindrops. Yi Futian revealed a strange look. He extended his hand, and the raindrops landed in his palm. They actually pricked his skin, and a slit appeared on his palm. As the raindrops kept pouring down, his palm gradually turned red. Blood appeared, and he felt a bit of pain. Rain of swords, Yi Futian mumbled. The raindrops also landed on his body, piercing right through his clothes, and directly landing on his skin. He felt an extremely uncomfortable prickling pain. Ever since he comprehended the sacred remains of Xinjiao the Great Emperor, and forged a body of Wei, Yi Futian's flesh was extremely powerful. Even top monstrous figures of the same cultivation plane as him could not break through the defense of his flesh. Their powerful attacks would not affect him when they landed on his body. Yet these raindrops had actually pricked his skin and could make him feel pain. One could imagine how much power was within these raindrops. As expected, it was as he had sensed. The yin aura bore an indestructible feel to it. It felt impenetrable. These raindrops were like water that could penetrate through rock. It was a form of will, and a type of Wei that became a part of Shi Qiao. When Yi Futian looked at Shi Qiao again, he was clearly more serious. He was no longer as casual as before. Before they even exchanged blows, he already sensed how terrifying Shi Qiao was. She might pose a greater threat to him than Xiaomu. As expected, the most prominent figures of the divine prefecture could not be underestimated. No wonder the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace were so confident in Shi Qiao that they even came to invite Yi Futian to join the West Imperial Palace. Buzz! Suddenly, an extremely powerful sword will gathered in the sky. Swordsmanship resonated, and a storm of the great path swept up from around Yi Futian's figure. It caused the raindrops to be unable to come in contact with his body. They were destroyed by the sword will. When he unleashed the attack power of the great path, the raindrops couldn't touch him. Terrifying sword will swept across the space. In an instant, sword will filled the sky. A storm of frightening sword chi that contained billions of swords charged toward Shi Qiao. However, Shi Qiao quietly stood there, seemingly unperturbed. At the same time, a curtain of rain fell from the sky. It suddenly began to rain all around. Countless raindrops plummeted down from the sky, pouring down on the howling sword will. The raindrops pierced the swords. The countless raindrops directly drowned out the astonishing storm of sword chi. The countless humming swords were pierced through, and could not approach Shi Qiao. The rain grew heavier. Of course, this was no ordinary rain. It was a domain of the Great Path, Shi Qiao's domain of the Great Path. Rumble. With Yi Futian's figure as the center, a starry world appeared. Stars circled around him, and enveloped the vast space. The rumbling of the Great Path could be heard. The stars all contained unparalleled power. The divine light of the various stars coalesced around Yi Futian's figure. When Shi Qiao saw this scene, she did not plan to give Yi Futian the chance to gather his power. Her figure shifted. This was the first time she had moved since the two of them began their exchange. Before this, she had always remained standing there quietly. This goddess stepped forward with peerless grace. She lifted her slender and delicate hands. Immediately, the surrounding curtain of rain moved with her arms. Countless raindrops coalesced and actually formed swords. It seemed as though the swords formed from the rain did not have any power behind them at all. Shi Qiao pointed forwards, and the multitude of rain swords pierced straight towards the various stars. The stars were gigantic, and did not appear to be something that swords formed from rainwater could affect. However, when the rain swords landed on one star, they actually kept attacking one spot on the star. Every drop of rain became a sword, and every drop of rain was a sword that lashed out. When the raindrops gathered together, the swords became even stronger and more domineering. Every drop of rain became a sword, and every drop of rain was a sword that lashed out. When the raindrops gathered together, the swords became even stronger and more domineering. This is one of the divine methods of the West Emperor, the raindrop divine sword. Cultivators of divine prefecture in the far distance were paying close attention to this battle. Shi Qiao enjoyed a great reputation far and wide. As the most powerful blood awakener of the West Emperor in thousands of years, her battle garnered lots of attention. According to legends, the West Emperor created the raindrop divine sword. One drop of rain could break open the sky. What was the definition of a great emperor? The great emperor was someone with the spirit of a pioneer, a world unto themselves. Take Xinjia the great emperor for instance. His body was a world in and of itself. Shi Qiao had inherited the ability of the West Emperor. In this realm of the great path, the raindrops that fell from heaven seemed to shine with sacred light. Naturally, these were no ordinary raindrops, and ordinary raindrops would not possess such terrifying power. As the rain fell and flooded the sky, there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Futian stood there watching those countless raindrop divine swords coming at him, and even he was stunned in this blinding curtain of rain. All the surrounding stars were annihilated under the barrage of raindrop sword will. At this moment, Futian's body of the great path was dazzling with the divine light, as the great path howled frantically. In an instant, he suddenly turned into the color of pure fire, as hot as the sun. He appeared as a divine body forged by it. Futian had once comprehended the body of Xinjia the great emperor, and cast an extraordinary physical form himself. Since then, he had not stopped improving and cultivating this physical body, to integrate all the power of the great path abilities into this physical form. At this time, his body turned into a bona fide divine body of the sun, and transformed into a sun. His body was releasing endless divine sunlight, radiated in all directions. When the divine glory of the sun touched the raindrop divine swords, the swords hissed, then dissipated under the sun's divine glory. At the same time, Futian's physical body became even more frightening. When the raindrop divine swords reached not far in front of him, they could not get any closer before being incinerated into nothing. As a result, a very curious scene was now forming in that space. In the midst of the pouring rain, there was a most brilliant sun, which then created a rainbow in that area of the great path. Shi Qiao did not waver in light of what had just happened, but remained where she stood. At this time, Shi Qiao, who was bathing in utter dazzling glory, was incredibly luminous, like a goddess befitting of her role as the descendant of the West Emperor. The terrible vision that hovered above her made her look like a goddess who was dominating this space. Further in the distance, many cultivators from divine prefecture felt an extreme chill. In the world of rain, they felt a bone-piercing iciness. It was as if the chill was coming deep within the soul. That's Shi Qiao's divine wheel of the great path, someone whispered. According to legends, Shi Qiao had inherited most of the West Emperor's abilities, and was the veritable number one heir of West Imperial Palace. She was the premier enchanting genius in the West Sea domain, a goddess-level existence. Although Futian had defeated Hua Junlai before, Shi Qiao and Hua Junlai were not opponents on the same level. Even Hua Junlai himself had to admit this. At this time, Futian also noticed a strong sense of danger on the battlefield. The rumbling sounds came out as his body grew larger, as if turning into a gigantic battle form of an ancient god. What's more frightening was that inside his body, the divine light of the sun and the shadow burst out at the same time. In the next moment, a diagram flew out of him, which was the yin-yang diagram. The diagram was expanding madly. The sun, moon, and stars appeared between heaven and earth, resembling a complete world. Futian's face was solemn as infinite stars surround this corner of the sky. Behind him, a divine shadow appeared, like the real manifestation of Ziwei the Great. Above the yin-yang diagram, the shadow and solar swords of catastrophe smashed out, interwoven with the heavy rain as the two collided, destroying it. But high above the sky, in the midst of the sky river, the eyes of the storm that was gathered by those horrific vortices became ever more terrifying. In the next moment, swords from those eyes of the storm lashed out, penetrating the void and descended. None of the defenses could stop them, not even the light of the catastrophe released by the yin-yang diagram. Boom, boom, boom. A series of shocking collisions were heard. The sword light that fell from those divine eyes blasted above the stars. Yi Futian was like the young great emperor at this moment. All the stars in the heavens were at his beckon and call with the imperial shadow behind him. Horrific shattering sounds came out as the stars began to crack and shatter. The light from the eye of Tianhe seemed to be endless, not just a one-time attack. However, the stars surrounding Yi Futian were rotating into infinity. Above a sky full of stars, rays of divine light landed on Yi Futian. At this moment, it seemed that all the power of the stars in heaven were at his disposal. At the same time, under the sky river, the eye of the storm fell down like mad, which impacted all the stars. Soon, the stars collapsed and shattered immediately, like a world broken. The entire battlefield was shocking beyond words. A voice came from among the cultivators of Heavenly Mandate Academy. The speaker was Emperor Nan. Obviously, he felt the power of this proud daughter, the princess of West Imperial Palace, its premier heir. She was even more of a threat to Yi Futian than Xiaomu ever was. Previously, even Xiaomu, the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, didn't make Yi Futian take him too seriously. However, this was not a surprise. Although Xiaomu was a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, he was one of many. Shi Qiyao was a descendant of the West Emperor and the strongest blood awakener in the past 1,000 years, who realized the potential in her bloodline. She was the first person in the future of West Imperial Palace. This all made sense. Perhaps in all the lands of Divine Prefecture, not many could be found who were like Shi Qiyao. It was powerful indeed. This princess of the West Imperial Palace seemed to have awakened the power of the great emperor. No ordinary clans could compete with these people from the ancient god clan. They each have their own advantages, Lord Taixian said in a low voice. There had never been any cultivators from the outside worlds in the original realm before, so they were considered the cream of the crop. But at the moment they felt they were a bunch of weaklings. Aside from those who had survived the divine tribulations of the Great Path, even characters like Shi Qiyao who was powerful enough to pose a threat to them. If Shi Qiyao took a step further, such as stepping into the realm of Renhuang, they would be no competition at all, and would probably be annihilated in seconds. Buzz! At this moment, Yi Futian's figure disappeared, and there was a space divine light shining. In the collapsed starry space, he had disappeared, rushing out of that area. A divine light shined brilliantly as Shi Qiyao detected danger in the air. This was the great path of space ability. Shi Qiyao felt that sense of danger, and her eyes suddenly became extremely frightening. She stood high above the sky as a terrifying storm erupted from her. Suddenly, her eyes turned into real divine eyes, shooting out rays of light that flooded the space. Suddenly, a figure appeared, and it was Yi Futian. His entire body was radiant beyond belief, and invincible. But at this time, Yi Futian could feel a powerful pressure. The divine eyes of Shi Qiyao looked down, and turning the space into an area belonging to the Great Path. Destructive light came towards him, capable of immolating flesh and dismantling the soul. The eye of the West Emperor. The cultivators from Divine Prefecture perceived this scene with a tremendous shock. According to rumors, Shi Qiyao, the princess of West Imperial Palace, may have inherited the eye of the West Emperor. Many people did not believe it before or had their doubts, but they couldn't do anything but believe it now that they witnessed this scene. Chapter 2359, Extraordinary Heritage? Chapter 2359, Extraordinary Heritage? Likewise, Shi Qiyao also became aware of the threat posed by Yi Futian. His body of the Great Path was extremely overpowering, almost like a divine entity. If Yi Futian were to get any closer, it would be very dangerous for her. The eyes of the West Emperor was considered part of the eye sorcery zone. At a glance, Yi Futian was completely submerged in the eye sorcery zone. The rain was like silky threads, and these raindrop divine swords transformed into endless rays of light. They all fell upon Yi Futian, and every raindrop contained invincible power. In addition, the rain had now transformed into threads, threatening to destroy everything in their path. The sword lights formed by the convergence of raindrops seemed to contain a power that could immolate spiritual souls. In this space, Futian felt as if he was mired in a swamp. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Buzz! More brilliant divine light bloomed as a peacock divine shadow appeared behind Futian. Then phantoms upon phantoms manifested out of the ether, and Futian seemed to be omnipresent at this moment. Faintly, there was a rhythm of roaring sound, and it was the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm that shattered all things. At the same time, many phantoms of Futian pointed toward the sky above simultaneously. Suddenly, many divine swords unleashed and carried with them an incredibly sharp aura of pure murder. The sword lights that were converged by the raindrops were pierced through and through, but at the same time, many elusive phantoms of Futian had also disappeared. Only one figure broke through everything while continuing its upward momentum. Soon it appeared to reach the end of this great path field. At this instant, in that space of the ice sorcery, a figure surrounded by divine light appeared. It was as if the spirit soul of Qiqiao herself had separated from her body and entered directly into the realm of West Emperor's eyes. Furthermore, behind her beautiful figure, an extremely sacred imperial shadow appeared. It was as if the West Emperor had reincarnated, descending into this field of ice sorcery. At this moment, Futian felt that the rain had invaded his mind, and every raindrop pricked his will painfully. More than that, the strength of this conception seemed to have exceeded Futian's experience. In his mind, body, and even the world of his life palace, it was full of raindrops. This was the world of the all-encompassing rain for as long as he was in this field, and under this conception, Futian saw Qiqiao, who was above him, pointing at him. Futian felt as if he was standing in the rain with nowhere to hide. At this moment, Qiqiao was no longer just a descendant of the great emperor. She was surrounded by divine light. It was as if she was an empress in her own right. And the one who unleashed these attacks was no longer her either, but the great emperor himself. This was clearly an illusion, but it felt so incredibly real. The cultivators in the West Imperial Palace considered Qiqiao as the premier heir. And as expected, she was stronger than imagined. It was possible that she may have already integrated the inheritance power from the West Emperor. After all, she was a descendant of the West Emperor himself, and the most powerful blood awakener, so it was not surprising that she could perfectly combine her ancestors' inheritance. Under such conception, the body and the spiritual soul, and even the life palace of Futian were under simultaneous attacks. He felt that could really be destroyed at any moment. He, who had created this divine body of the great path, thought that it was an indestructible body, but the sense of danger was so real that he might have been killed just by this illusion alone. Boom! Futian's life palace was also howling as a peculiar aura was released from his body. From the world of the life palace, divine light suddenly gushed out, drowning the will of the raindrops completely. When the life spirit of the life palace released all its divine might, the divine light on Futian's body became even more dazzling. In a single turning of the mind, an area of the great path now centered around him, shrouding the vast surrounding area, as if swallowing up that world full of raindrops. Therefore, within the great path realm that belonged to the eyes of the West Emperor, another great path realm was now competing for sovereignty. When she perceived this power, Qiqiao's eyes released an incomparable radiance. She stared at Futian and thought that, just as she had guessed, Futian must have had an amazing heritage. Who exactly was he? But there was no time to think at this time. Her delicate hands pointed down, resembling a gesture from the West Emperor. At the same time, Futian also pointed to the heavens. Two lights appeared in the area of the great path, and when the two lights intertwined, a most mighty force erupted. Shocking light lit up the space. In the next moment, they both retreated simultaneously, as everything seemed to evaporate in an instant. The rain was still falling softly upon Futian. That white-haired figure just stood there, so quietly, as he looked up at Qiqiao, who was standing above the rain. This princess of the West Imperial Palace was indeed stronger than Xiao Mu, the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Little did he know that Qiqiao, the princess of West Imperial Palace, was equally shocked and disturbed. Although she had no time to carefully discerning the ability that Yi Futian released just now, she knew that was the true testament of Yi Futian's ability, his true divine wheel of the great path. It was a pity that it was just for a moment, but in that brief moment's time, Shi Qiao seemed to have perceived something. Suddenly the rain stopped, and there was no more rainfall in this entire world. Everything seemed to exist only in Shi Qiao's thoughts. The cultivators below looked up into the sky, wondering who had won this battle. It seemed that they had not seen any definitive results yet. The cultivators from West Imperial Palace were a bit confused. Like the others, they did not see everything clearly before Shi Qiao had already withdrawn her strength. It was clear that she did not intend to continue the fight. What had just happened beneath the eyes of the West Emperor? Did the eyes of the West Emperor unable to inflict serious damage on Yi Futian? At this time, the white-haired figure standing in the void did not appear to be injured. His breath was calm, and he was unharmed. In the West Sea domain, no one could battle Shi Qiao, and there was no need for Shi Qiao to use all of her strength. The eyes of the West Emperor was enough to crush some of the topmost enchanting geniuses in the West Imperial Palace. However, did that number one genius talent in the original realm actually hold off the attack of the eyes of the West Emperor? And remember, his realm was lower than that of Shi Qiao. From this perspective, perhaps Yi Futian's performance was even more impressive in this battle. What kind of existence was this that even Shi Qiao was not able to defeat him? Those top forces from Divine Prefecture were equally shaken to their core. Hua Junlai of the Haoyan clan was defeated once at the hands of Yi Futian, but now even Shi Qiao was unable to gain victory. Who was this Yi Futian? What kind of secrets was he harboring? In their investigations on Yi Futian, the most important detail was always missing: his birthplace. This one missing link seemed to suggest that something had been deliberately hidden. At this moment, above the firmament, Shi Qiao actually gave the most alluring smile as she looked down at Yi Futian below. She said, "Emperor Ye's reputation is well deserved. In the battle today, Qiao was not up to the challenge. In this case, I would like to cultivate with Emperor Yi in the Heavenly Mandate Academy." Shi Qiao's words stunned the cultivators of West Imperial Palace. What had just happened in this battle? Shi Qiao had agreed to cultivate with Yi Futian in the Heavenly Mandate Academy? The princess of West Imperial Palace, the reigning heir and the descendant of West Emperor, was to cultivate in Heavenly Mandate Academy? What was this all about? "Qiao, don't be hasty," an elder from the West Imperial Palace cautioned Shi Qiao via voice transmission. He seemed to worry that Shi Qiao made this decision in the heat of the moment. "I have my reasons," Shi Qiao responded with voice transmission as well, which silenced the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace. There was no doubt about Shi Qiao's status within West Imperial Palace. Since she had made the decision, she must be quite serious, and no one could dissuade her. Yi Futian's surprise was no lesser than the others, and he didn't really understand it. He looked up at the figure in the sky. Was Shi Qiao serious about following him in cultivation at the Heavenly Mandate Academy? "Is Goddess Qiao serious?" asked Yi Futian. But Shi Qiao walked towards the area below and came to Yi Futian's side. She then continued moving downward, preparing to return to the dry land below. As Yi Futian accompanied her, Shi Qiao glanced back and smiled. "I said before that I wanted to see Emperor Ye's methods. Now that I have seen them in this battle, I am quite impressed. From now on, I wish to cultivate in Heavenly Mandate Academy, and I hope Emperor Yi will not deny me this opportunity." They had already returned to the grounds of the Heavenly Mandate Academy below. Everyone in the Heavenly Mandate Academy was most surprised by this. Was Shi Qiao serious about staying and cultivating? Did this mean that Yi Futian would also be cultivating at the West Imperial Palace? The goddess of West Imperial Palace was a little too enigmatic. However, her strength was truly tyrannical. Before this, the cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy had never seen anyone who could battle Yi Futian to such a degree. Not even the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor himself. Shi Qiao's combat effectiveness had indeed surpassed any challengers so far. But from this perspective, The cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy admired her quite a bit. Such a woman, no doubt, would achieve extraordinary feats in the future. At this moment, there were several tyrannical auras that came from a distance. Suddenly, just as the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy raised their heads to look afar, groups of cultivators had traversed through the void and entered the bounds of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. These powerful cultivators were all from top principalities in the Divine Prefecture, and several of them belonged to Ancient God Clan. With such a powerful background, the Heavenly Mandate Academy cultivators were unable to intercept them and could only allow them entry into the academy. Goddess Qiyao of the West Imperial Palace wanted to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy, someone asked. Obviously, these cultivators had heard the conversation between Shi Qiyao and Yi Futian, and they had all observed the battle that had just taken place. Why would Shi Qiyao choose to cultivate inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Unless Shi Qiyao had detected something during their battle, like the West Imperial Palace, they had checked into Yi Futian's past, and thought that anything unusual about Yi Futian must be because of some unearthed secrets. They were thinking that perhaps Shi Qiyao wanted to go to the Heavenly Mandate Academy as a way of winning Yi Futian over. Why? Do you have something you want to say? Shi Qiyao responded nonchalantly, looking at the man who spoke. Goddess Qiyao wanting to cultivate at the Heavenly Mandate Academy has nothing to do with us. So how could we dare to have an opinion? The man asked with a smile. We are just curious, that's all. Emperor Yi is talented, but even Goddess Qiyao, the descendant of the West Emperor, was much impressed by him. We thought that it must be because he has some extraordinary heritage. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. They were doubtful about Yi Futian's background. Yi Futian naturally realized this. He glanced around at the various cultivators. When he heard Shi Qiyao's statements before, he knew that the various forces of the Divine Prefecture had a deep understanding of him. It was normal for them to speculate. What sort of background could I have come from? Ever since I started cultivating in the 9 states in the lower worlds, I have passed through trials and tribulations to reach where I am today. I was born in a small place that most likely all of you have never heard of. If I came from an extraordinary background, wouldn't I be the same as everyone here, and be cultivating in the upper worlds of the Divine Prefecture? Said Yi Futian with a smile. He appeared casual as he said this, let alone other people who were speculating. Even he himself was not clear about his own background. He naturally knew that his parents in Qingzhou were not his birth parents. They must be somebody else. It was very strange that his parents and family had disappeared. They might have intentionally wanted to hide something. Moreover, the existence of his godfather had proven this point. A super cultivator of the devil world had been watching over him in Qingzhou, and claimed that he was born an emperor. How could Yi Futian's background be simple? Of course, he wouldn't reveal these facts. Who knew what would happen if he did? Since his godfather had intentionally kept it a secret, he would need to do so too. If a day came that he did not need to do so anymore, he might know the whole truth then. A cultivator of the Divine Prefecture replied. For a cultivator from a small place, you have managed to suppress various monstrous figures and unify the original realm. You defeated the cultivators of the Ancient God Clan, as well as the disciple of the Devil Emperor. You also inherited the teachings of several great emperors. With unparalleled talent, you have conquered most of the relics of the great emperors. You unlocked the teachings of the Demon Peacock Emperor back in the secret zone of the Donghua domain. Ren Huangyi, I suspect no one will believe you when you claim that your background is ordinary. It is reasonable for you to think so. It might be that I had an extraordinary birth, and that I am a descendant of a deity, who placed me in the mortal realm to grow and hone my will and character. No wonder I have such extraordinary talents. Thank you for reminding me. I seem to have understood some things, replied Yi Futian with a smile. However, if that is truly the case, the deity who gave birth to me is truly harsh. letting me face such trials and tribulations. In the future, if it turns out to be true, I will not recognize them as my parents." When the crowd heard Yi Futian jokingly say this, they were speechless. This fellow was actually praising himself. However, what he said made sense. If the truth was as they speculated and Yi Futian's background was extraordinary, why did he need to experience so many hardships? When they were investigating Yi Futian's history of development, they discovered that it was no small feat that he had managed to survive to the present day. He had fought his way through to this day. Ignoring the talent that he was born with, all his experiences were real. Various people revealed contemplative looks. They seemed to be considering some possibility. Some senior cultivators understood that part of history better. It couldn't be like that, could it? However, if it was truly so, they still did not dare to mention it. They merely speculated inside their minds. How likely was that possible? It might be that they were overthinking things. Some people were destined to be extraordinary from birth. They were rare finds that appeared once every 1,000 or 10,000 years. Such people were not unheard of in the history of the cultivation world. Rumor has it that Ren Huangyi has allied with the Lost Clan and allowed their cultivators to enter the starry cultivation court of the Ziwei segmentum and the Four-Corner Village, someone said, changing the subject. They no longer wanted to speak on the matter of Yi Futian's background. Yi Futian responded calmly, The Heavenly Mandate Academy has already allied with the Lost Clan. Currently, the Shinny continent is right next to the Heavenly Mandate realm. I believe that all of you have already long known of this. I hope that all of you may set aside your differences and stand against the cultivators of the other worlds together with us. This was no secret. Everyone already knew about this. A little grudge is no big deal. We are all reasonable people. For the greater good, we naturally know what to do. I believe it is the same for Ren Huangyi. Now the Divine Prefecture is one. The various forces have united and are now allies. Since Ren Huangyi is willing to ally with the Lost Clan, you must certainly also be willing to ally with us. In the future, if the opportunity arises, Ren Huangyi can head to the Divine Prefecture to cultivate amongst our forces and learn the magnum opuses of our clans. Someone said freely and frankly. This caused the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy to all reveal strange expressions. Was this fellow who was speaking coveting the cultivation techniques of the Ziwei segmentum, the Four-Corner Village, as well as the Lost Clan? Yi Futian could head over to cultivate with the clans and forces of the Divine Prefecture in the future? Now the original realm was facing a huge change. Who could say for sure what would happen in the future? However, it was certain that the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture wanted to first cultivate the fateful encounters that Yi Futian had obtained. Yi Futian did not point it out. Now most of the forces of the Divine Prefecture were dissatisfied with him and had objections with him. His stance during the battle against the Lost Clan back then had in fact aided the Lost Clan. Under such circumstances, he did not want to offend the forces of the Divine Prefecture further. Right then, this person made this proposal for him to concede and offer up the fateful encounters that he had obtained to the forces of the Divine Prefecture to cultivate. This would settle the score. In reality, they wanted Yi Futian to make a sacrifice to obtain the forgiveness of the forces of the Divine Prefecture. Senior, what you say is true. I am also of the same mind. Hence, I made an alliance with the Lost Clan, and we exchanged cultivation resources with each other. I taught the members of the Lost Clan attack techniques, and allowed their cultivators to head over to the Starry Cultivation Court in the Ziwei segmentum to cultivate. Similarly, the members of the Heavenly Mandate Academy also entered into the secret zone of the Lost Clan to cultivate. I myself have also mastered the battle matrix of the rocks, revealed Yi Futian as he looked at the other party. If all of you are willing to form an alliance with us for the greater good of the Divine Prefecture, I will naturally have no objections. I am willing to offer up the cultivation resources that the Heavenly Mandate Academy controls, in exchange for all your cultivation techniques. We shall improve together to face the changes in the original realm. He said this in a friendly tone, as he did not mind forming alliances. However, If the members of the divine prefecture merely coveted his cultivation resources, it was meaningless for him to concede. He might even be making his future enemies stronger by allowing the members of the divine prefecture to improve their abilities. If a force was not willing to forge an alliance and exchange cultivation resources, Futian did not believe that the other party would be grateful for his aid. If he gave them an inch, the other party would ask for a foot. For instance, they might seek the teachings of the great emperors. If that was the case, he might as well draw a line in the sand clearly. When the elder heard Futian say this, he narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed that it was impossible for them to make this top genius in the original realm concede. During the battle against the Lost Clan, Futian had offended many forces of the divine prefecture. Was he actually not afraid of the consequences? Then what about Goddess Qiyao? If she joins the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, is that considered having forged an alliance with you? Someone asked. Divine light shot out from Qiyao's beautiful gaze as she looked at the other party. Her eyes actually contained formless pressure that enveloped the other party from afar. The cultivator who had spoken was a 9th-tier Renhuang. Qiyao was actually not afraid of him, glaring at him all the same. He frowned and swept a glance at the other party. Qiyao said, "Since I have joined the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, I will naturally follow the arrangements of the college chief. I will cultivate in whatever Ren Huangyi allows me to." As she said this, Qiyao smiled and said to Futian, "Ren Huangyi, what do you think about this?" "Goddess Qiyao, since you are willing to do so, I will not turn you away," replied Futian. This caused the members of the divine prefecture to stare at the two of them. Why did the relationship between the two of them feel abnormal? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The cultivators looked at Futian and Qiyao. Now the two of them were basically in sync. The cultivators looked at Futian and Qiyao. Now the two of them were basically in sync. Was the West Imperial Palace planning to lay its hands on the cultivation resources that Futian possessed? They actually did not hesitate to allow Qiyao to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate and seduce Futian. With the peerless elegance of Goddess Qiyao, even Futian would have difficulty resisting her charms. They might even become a couple. Would the members of the West Imperial Palace be willing to marry off their future top figure? Was Futian worthy of them doing so? If they set aside their statuses, the two of them were quite a match. Both of them were peerless figures. It was just that Futian's origins were not very clear. Now everyone was speculating over it. However, Qiyao was the true descendant of a great emperor. She was the descendant of the West Emperor, and the strongest person to awaken to the power of his bloodline. She was the first to do so in 1,000 years. With such status and exceptional talent, even as the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Futian was far from worthy of her hand. From the looks of it, Ren Huangyi is looking down on the other forces of the divine prefecture, someone said in a provocative tone. The person continued, "You allied yourself with the Lost Clan and allowed Goddess Qiyao of the West Imperial Palace to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. However, you seem unwilling to do the same with the other forces of the divine prefecture. It appears that Ren Huangyi has not let go of the incident with the Lost Clan. Why do you say so? I have said that as long as you are willing, the Heavenly Mandate Academy will ally with the various forces of the divine prefecture and exchange cultivation resources," replied Futian in a casual tone. He was not angered. He naturally understood that the members of the divine prefecture were intentionally provoking him and wanted to stir up conflict. "All right. Our Infinite Mountains is willing to offer up cultivation resources for exchange and form an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate Academy," a cultivator said. He was from the strongest force of the boundless domain, Infinite Mountains. They had inherited the teachings of an ancient great emperor figure. Now they had taken the initiative to ally with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy frowned. They were doubtful of the sincerity of the other party. Would the cultivators from the boundless domain really be willing to share their top cultivation resources with them? The cultivators from the boundless domain most likely intended to share some cultivation techniques perfunctorily in exchange for the cultivation resources in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Ren Huangchen took a step forward and replied, "Of course, there's no problem. However, I need to first examine what kind of resources you are willing to share. Based on that, the Heavenly Mandate Academy will decide what level of cultivation resources we will exchange." It would not be easy for the other party to ally with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. If the other party only coveted their cultivation resources, they would not agree to their request. From the looks of it, the Heavenly Mandate Academy still does not trust the forces from the Divine Prefecture. The so-called alliance is only lip service. In reality, you have no intention of joining forces with us, snorted the cultivator from Infinite Mountains. He added, "Looks like the West Imperial Palace is more capable in persuasion." "What do you mean by that?" questioned a cultivator from the West Imperial Palace coldly. He gave the cultivator from Infinite Mountains a displeased glance. The latter paid no heed to it and merely smiled. A youth then emerged from the group of cultivators from Infinite Mountains. The youth was surrounded by the divine halo of the Great Path. The brilliant glory which surrounded him seemed to be a natural glimmer, and not something he intentionally unleashed. It was as though he was born with a divine body, and was destined to be exceptional. With a glance, the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace recognized the youth. He was the most talented figure among this generation of cultivators from Infinite Mountains. He was the divine child of Infinite Mountains, and similarly the heir of a great emperor. He was powerful, and was crowned Boundless Divine Child. Boundless Divine Child stepped forward as he looked at Yi Futian and Shi Qiyao. He said, "I have long heard of the fame of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Since Goddess Qiyao is willing to enter the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, I also want to cultivate in the academy for a period of time. Will Ren Huangyi allow my sudden request?" Boundless Divine Child continued, "Of course. I only ask Ren Huangyi to treat all of us equally. I am not interested in the cultivation resources of the Heavenly Mandate Academy." As soon as he said this, another person emerged from the crowd and said, "I also want to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy for a period of time. Will Ren Huangyi allow it?" This person was the divine child of the Vajra region. Golden light circled around his entire body. He appeared to have a golden divine body. It looked extremely powerful. Then one by one, others expressed their intentions of joining the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. This caused the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy to reveal strange looks. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was not some holy land. They might be considered the #1 cultivation ground in the original realm, but these people were from the ancient god clan. Did they need to do so? Clearly, they had no intention of joining the Heavenly Mandate Academy for real. For them, the only value that the Heavenly Mandate Academy offered was the starry cultivation court, as well as the teachings inherited from the great emperors that Yi Futian mastered. Or perhaps, these forces from the Divine Prefecture only wanted to pressure the Heavenly Mandate Academy and force Yi Futian to yield. They wanted the Heavenly Mandate Academy to compromise and share all their cultivation resources with all. Otherwise, why would they lower their statuses to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Deep down, these cultivators from the ancient god clan most likely looked down upon the Heavenly Mandate Academy, which was a local force of the original realm. Moreover, during their battle with the Lost Clan, Yi Futian offended quite a few factions of the ancient god clan. After all, Yi Futian once collaborated with the ancient god clan to break through the battle matrix of the rocks. These factions assumed that Yi Futian did not give his best during the battle, leading to their failure to break through the matrix. Otherwise, they would have entered into the secret zone of the Lost Clan then. Yi Futian himself forged an alliance with the Lost Clan and had access to their cultivation resources. He then attracted Goddess Qiyao from the West Imperial Palace to join him to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. In the future, Yi Futian might draw the rest of the forces in the West Sea domain to form an alliance with him. His academy would further expand its influence This caused the ancient god clan from the divine prefecture to be irritated. Moreover, they were also interested in unveiling the secrets behind Yi Futian's identity. Hence, they were intentionally suppressing Yi Futian now. Yi Futian saw various figures standing in different locations in the sky. Each and every one of them were outstanding cultivators. The cultivator from the Haoyin clan was among them too. Yi Futian even spotted Hua Junlai in the crowd. Judging from their auras and the divine light of the great path which surrounded their bodies, they had no intention of forging an alliance with him. They were clearly here to force him, and the Heavenly Mandate Academy to yield to their demands. The other forces of the divine prefecture stood further behind. They did not declare their stance. However, they most likely wanted a slice of the pie, and were waiting for Yi Futian to compromise. Shi Qiyao gazed up at the silhouettes in the sky. Each one of these figures were extraordinary. There were 8th tier and 9th tier renhuangs. Many of them were renowned figures in their respective domain, in the 18 domains of the divine prefecture. Now they were all standing in the sky and pressuring Yi Futian. They claimed to want to form an alliance, but they were pressuring him to yield in reality. However, this was unrelated to her. Although she said she wanted to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, that did not mean that she would join Yi Futian in going against the various forces of the divine prefecture. She wanted to see how Yi Futian would resolve his situation. That day, in the region of the Lost Clan, it was Princess Donghuang descending upon the region that had resolved the crisis faced by the Lost Clan and allowed Yi Futian to escape his predicament. However, the forces of the divine prefecture clearly were not willing to let him go. Now they had descended upon the Heavenly Mandate Academy simultaneously. The alliance between Yi Futian and the Lost Clan had clearly made the various forces upset. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.